Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Welcome, everybody. Alrighty, I'll tell you what, I have a great deal to get to. A couple of local issues right off the top that I want to get to may not be relevant for everybody, but certainly something that's not unique to just where I live. And then I have a great deal of education-related stories to get to also. And then some updated jab stuff, which is remarkably important. And again, this has to do with sheriff's departments. And as you've heard me mention before, sheriff's departments, of course, claim to have been involved in this, and some have claimed to help regarding the masks and the jabs. But, ladies and gentlemen, I've got basically the undeniable proof as to why sheriff's departments are in on this entire fraud. And if you thought that it was about money, well, you would be correct. It is about money. So I'll get to that later. And then again, some more jab-related stories as well, and a few recent revelations. And then I want to end with a section of a book that I recently purchased, sort of based on I'd say the advice of Amazing Polly. She did an episode recently titled "Live Not by Lies," and it's a book written by Rod Dreher, if I'm saying his last name correctly. It's the subtitle is A Manual for Christian Dissidents. It's an interesting book. I'll get into it a little bit later. The first half of it is kind of historically inaccurate to some extent. There are some inaccuracies in it, but the second part of the book, and he has it divided into two separate parts. The second part of the book is, I think, far more interesting, which it has more to do with what is it that the individual and the collective can do, and what responsibility, of course, we have regarding totalitarianism and things like Satanism. Now, again, the book is disappointing in a number of realms because it says nothing about the Jewish influence on totalitarianism. It says nothing about Satanism. It mentions Bolshevism maybe just over half a dozen times in the book is all, but there's no clear line that's drawn between satanic Jewry and then Bolshevism and totalitarianism, which is all the same. It's all exactly the same thing. So there are just certain lines that he clearly doesn't cross, and there's certain subjects he doesn't bring up. But again, the second half of the book seems to be very well done, and I want to read the first half of that, or at least a portion of the very first part of the second half, which is a very interesting story, and I completely agree with it. So let me get to this first, and again, this is a local issue. It's kind of an interesting story, and it's a horrific one as well, but it needs to be brought up because I know that there are local individuals who listen to my show. And again, this isn't necessarily unique just to where I live. This is something that I think everybody could pay attention to, certainly wherever you live. And then, of course, stand up for local individuals who are victimized by people like this. In fact, this person isn't even a person, they're a monster. This individual's name is Sherman Jackson. Sherman Jackson went to school with my brother and I. We grew up here in the same town. He's a black guy, as you would expect. He's about a year older than me, and he's a sexual predator. He is a registered sex offender, and he's always been a sexual predator. I remember stories of him, and I even witnessed some of this behavior dating back when we were in high school. He's a horrible human being, and his family is just disgusting as well. But they make excuses for him and 1,000 other things. I'll get to the family a little bit later. Either way, back in September, October, I think it was actually September of 2018, Sherman Jackson was arrested for kidnapping and locking a girl in the back of his SUV that he was using as a taxi service, which ironically enough, he called his taxi service Sherman's Safe Ride. As soon as I saw that on the side of this SUV that he had purchased and was giving girls drives around town for money, late at night, again on a college campus, I knew exactly what he had planned. And a lot of people, unfortunately, did not. But he is a predator, of course. And he ended up locking this girl in the back of his SUV in the parking lot of a McDonald's, allegedly, and then, of course, sexually assaulted her. I don't believe there was any rape involved, but it was certainly sexual assault with kidnapping involved, and then he did it with someone else as well. He was ultimately sentenced to prison for 5 years, and he's recently got out. Well, Sherman Jackson is back to his old ways. because as we know, individuals like this cannot be cured. There is a cure. It's called penicillin, as it turns out. It's an over-the-counter prescription, and its primary ingredient is lead. But as it turns out, we can't really use that particular cure all of the time. So what we have to do, of course, is just be vigilant and then use the law the best that we can. Again, he is a registered sex offender. It's beyond evident that he's continuing to do these things, in particular within the local donut shop here in town. He is approaching the young girls who work there and then creeping around them, buying a couple of donuts, and then asking them questions about where they live and when they get off of work and all this other stuff. Again, he's a predator. In fact, I want to read a recent post that was sent my way that he himself wrote. Looks like it's probably from Facebook or something. It's dated August 27th. I don't know what year this was. But he said the following, quote, "Throwback to when she really cares. I love white ladies, but they hurt me a lot and let me down, but I won't back off until I find the right one." And it's a picture of him with a couple of white ladies, and then there's a couple of black kids in one of the photographs and whatever else. This individual is not well. He's not well. He can't be cured. There's nothing about this that is good. It's evident he's violating some probation. He has to be violating some probation. He has to be on probation, staying away from women, from girls, whatever it may be, and certainly not harassing them in a sexual way, which he continues to do. Apparently, there is going to be a restraining order against him as of Monday regarding the donut shop, which is a good thing, but people need to take this into consideration, including individuals who live around where I live. Sherman Jackson is dangerous. I've always said carry a gun. I still mean that. Sherman Jackson has a temper. He is dangerous. He has been to prison. He's a sexual predator. And if someone gets in his way, well, you had better be prepared to defend yourself. So stay away from him. Do not talk to him. Again, if you witness him engaging in any kind of harassing behavior with anyone, call the police immediately. Harassment is a crime. And if a felon is engaging in it, which he is a felon, then that's a violation of one's probation and he should go back to jail. Again, these are also of a sexual nature, so people need to keep things like that in mind too. But if I had daughters or anyone close to me who was working at a particular establishment where someone like a Sherman Jackson was showing up, I would make sure that those individuals not only carried a gun, but that they just didn't go there anymore. And the employer of this donut shop knows this. They're aware of what is going on. But again, he should be considered dangerous, to say the least. So keep that in mind moving forward, regardless of where you live. People like this, again, they cannot be cured. What makes this interesting too, and it's not unusual because we know that these unfortunate familial connections exist, but I want to say this first, there's absolutely nothing to fear when it comes to his parents. His parents are equally as retarded as he is. They're horrible people. And again, for them to even say that they find this kind of behavior to be shocking, well, then they're not awake and they're not aware of their own child, and that's a problem. So, as it turns out, Sherman Jackson's mother, Fran Jackson, also happens to be, not ironic, the head of Black Lives Matter in Oxford, Ohio, and she is also the head of the NAACP. Now, that doesn't matter. None of that matters, and no one should be afraid of Fran Jackson. Again, she's a lunatic, and she's not that bright. But you shouldn't be afraid of these people. The law is the law, and you should exercise all of your rights, including turning in someone such as him to law enforcement anytime, any place. So remain vigilant. That's about all I can say. Apparently the police have been contacted. That's good. I think a restraining order is a little mild. He should be arrested for his behavior, because a restraining order won't keep him away. He is dangerous, and again, people should stay away from him. So just keep that in mind. Okay. I want to mention this. This is an interesting little thing here when it comes to housing, which, by the way, there's also a little local update here where you may recall that I played some audio from my dad during a planning committee meeting in the town where we live. And he approached this particular committee along with individuals who, again, utilize a park that are related, that is right next to a mobile home park. It's an open green space park, essentially. It's at least a couple acres large. They ended up winning, of course, that particular case, and they voted it down in the committee meeting. But the city council recently took up the issue because then they were going to vote on it as to whether or not to reappropriate the land for whatever they want to use it for, and then do whatever they want to do on that particular land. As it turned out, there were two votes. In one vote, the majority of city council just barely voted to not do anything with the land and certainly not build on it and take it away from those people. And then the second vote had to do with reappropriating it. And then again, no one voted for it, or it was vice versa. Either way, the point is the park remains with the mobile home individuals. And that's the way that it's going to be. That was the original agreement. And that's the way that it's going to be, which is a good thing. That brings me to this. And this again, again, that local issue, as you know, and as I've even said here on the show, has major national implications. Local government reappropriating local land and taking it, again, for illegal aliens. That's what this really is about. It's not just about putting individuals who are homeless or are experiencing poverty within quote-unquote affordable housing. It really truly is about making housing and then filling said housing with illegal aliens. This, of course, is not widely discussed and widely talked about, and they certainly aren't going to admit that. And then, of course, we know their tactics, that if you say such a thing that is remarkably truthful, they call you all kinds of names like a xenophobe and all this other horseshit. None of that matters. People can call people names all they want. Facts are facts. And again, I'm not afraid of any illegal alien. They should be afraid of us. They should be afraid of us. So here's why I rehashed that and why I mentioned this. There is a term that exists out there now that is called workforce housing. And I'm pulling this from a website that is a crowdfunding website, but it's called Grower Crowd. And it says the following here. It says, what is workforce housing and how can you benefit? It says workforce housing, quote unquote, is housing built to serve families that are sitting in the middle between true affordable housing and luxury housing. There are a few different versions of workforce housing. Typically, they come into play at an income level where you're serving families that earn between 80 and 120% of median income. The exact amount depends on the county and state and wherever or whatever market you're in. I want to play this particular guy's audio because he seems like a serious grifter. And there's no way someone is in this line of work and can be honest. But his name is Scott Chopin, founder and CEO of Urban Pacific. And he defines what is workforce housing, a real estate model. So give this guy a listen in 3, 2, 1.
So fundamentally, what I consider workforce housing to be is to serve families that are sitting in the middle between true affordable housing and luxury, high-end market rate housing. So I'm going to give it to you in a few different versions. So on an income level, we're serving families between 80 and 120% of median income. That would vary by county and state, whatever market you're in, of course. But more importantly, we're looking for creating a product that serves families, however their income is generated, that are basically being ever sort of dropped lower in the food chain in the marketplace. So they can't afford luxury. They don't make enough generally to afford brand new luxury housing. They make too much to qualify for true affordable housing, what I call, government subsidized, true affordable housing. And there's this gap in between those two spaces And it's actually a widening gap when you consider that rents and housing costs are going up generally in all major urban metro markets, but wages are stagnant, and they're stagnant for this group. They are stuck in the middle, in essence. And so our offer of workforce housing is specifically to a family that would rent one of our UTH workforce housing units at a rate that basically has them afford it at 30% of their moderate income.
Okay, so it's based on a percentage of average household income.
Right.
And a percentage of that income for rent. That's
yeah.
And is that the broadest? Is that the broad definition of workforce housing as well? Is that
it's
pretty standard?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And many people have different versions of workforce housing, right? I mean, every person has their own interpretation of that. So our answer is ours is a rental model that happens to certain families that I just described. But some people consider workforce housing to be for sale, right? But I think generally it's considered to be maybe attainable or more affordable than market rate, but not as deeply as affordable as your government subsidized housing. So I think on a generic fundamental basis, you would have that be the broader definition.
There's a lot of tells there, which again is one of the reasons why I've titled this episode Sleight of Hand. Okay, local, national, and geopolitical fraud in your participation. In my opinion, this is one of those things where the individual is attempting to restructure the name of affordable housing into workforce housing. Why do they do that, do you think? And why are they using the term workforce? That, of course, is a Bolshevik Soviet term, number one. And number two, they know that the term, just like all leftists understand that their terminology becomes stale over the course of time, they know that the term affordable housing has basically run its course. So now they're saying, well, the majority of individuals who need a place to live, we want to call that workforce housing. And what we'll do is we'll cater the amount that they have to pay in rent based on what they make. And we'll set that at a particular rate or a particular percentage, 30%, 20%, 10%, based on what they're making. And make it sound like the individuals living here need a job. That's the other part of this scam, is that's not true. These individuals erect these homes. They have local city councils repurpose land, flat out take it, which, by the way, they did that here locally in another neighborhood, which is surrounded by regular homes. They took an entire wooded area and they simply repurposed it. So they're going to knock down all of these trees. They're going to wipe out all of this wildlife. And what are they going to put there? They're going to put trailers. They're going to put trailers around regular homes. It's disgusting. It's going to be disgusting. And there were people again at this local city council meeting, and they were yelling about this. Why are you doing this? How can you possibly do this? They're always trying to do this, though. They're always trying to take wooded area. And you would think, again, that because they are the leftists that they would care about the environment. But ladies and gentlemen, they don't. They don't. They're receiving some kind of a kickback as a result of reappropriating land to bring in illegals. That's what this is all about. They have no idea that when you bring illegals here and when you bring poverty-stricken individuals here, you bring crime. And when you wave them all in and you consistently do that, you bring crime. The audio you just heard from this Scott Chopin guy, Chopin, whatever the hell his name is, what he's saying is he's claiming that he does this in urban areas. So again, whether it's reappropriating land, but it doesn't matter. They're still taxing individuals based on what they make, and that becomes their rent, rather than just setting a particular rent because he doesn't think that that's equitable or fair. The whole point is this. They're always trying to create roofs over the heads of illegals, because look at the kinds of people that they're bringing into our country. They're bringing in military, able-bodied, male-aged people. Yes, there are some women. Yes, there are some children. And they're assuming that they're related. We, of course, know that they typically are not. These kids are being trafficked. But these are the kinds of conglomerates that are doing whatever they can to create these kinds of buildings to put these kinds of people up. And if they can do it in an inner city, then they're going to do it. If they can do it in a small university town like where I live, then they're going to do it. And so I'm bringing this to your attention because this is a phrase I think that we're going to hear more about, is workforce housing. They know that the phrase, again, affordable housing, has run its course. It's gone stale. So keep your ears peeled for the phrase workforce housing. They're going to start using that in the future. And they're going to claim that it's better than affordable housing because it's based on their working income. And that's how much they pay rent, is a percentage of their working income. So if you have an individual, again, who makes more, well, they're going to have to pay more in rent, as opposed to the person who lives right next door to them in the exact same kind of place who works less. Well, their rent will be lower than that. Does that sound fair? No, it doesn't. It's just based on whether or not they allegedly have a job or not, and how much money they're actually making. So there you go. There's that. I came across that. Again, I haven't, beyond what I just explained, I haven't done a true deep dive on it, but I just wanted to bring that up because this is something that I haven't heard of before, but I did do a little bit of reading on it, and then, of course, heard his nonsense explanation, and I thought, I was just compelled to mention it because I think that that's something that is another way that, the shell game is played. And they love word manipulation and running a word right to its logical end, so they think, and then they change the word in front of people or behind people's backs in order to, again, carry out whatever nefarious goals they want to carry out and make a profit on it. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, and there you go. All right. The next thing, 9/11. Talk about a segue. Let's go from workforce housing to 9/11. Welcome to another anniversary of 9/11, everybody. There were no airplanes. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on 9/11, but I will make this giant suggestion. 9/11 is a perfect day to make sure that you're on the right social media platforms and that you're learning something. Okay, the old hashtag never forget. As cliche as that is, the thing that you should never forget is that on an anniversary like 9/11, you would do well to be on the right social media platforms so that you can learn the truth about what is going on. And not just what is currently going on, of course, but what actually happened back then, because you can look at it with fresh eyes. During 9/11 and every anniversary of 9/11, if you're not on BitChute or Gab, you're missing the truth. Because it's those days on BitChute and Gab, and I've noticed this pattern because those two platforms take that day very seriously, as they should. The researchers that have put together endless videos describing the truth about what took place, the fact that there were no airplanes, the only airplane that anybody saw was on their TV and it was CGI'd. In fact, there's excellent footage that exists, and it's frankly kind of all over the place on those platforms. And I wish I had it right at my fingertips right now because I would have played it for you, but it was over a 2-hour-long news, whatever it was, a local NBC affiliate in downtown New York there, in New York City. And it's basically a helicopter, and they were flying in front of the World Trade Centers when the first one was already on fire. And then you hear the individual in the helicopter talking, but then you hear them talking with the male and female news anchors in their studio. It's like Channel 4, NBC, something like that. And then the second tower just explodes. There's no plane, zero plane that hits the tower. It's just not there. And so what immediately happens in the audio is they say, oh, there's been another explosion. Well, it looks like maybe something else hit it. And then one of them says, well, there was no airplane. I didn't see any airplane. And then the other person chimes in and goes, well, I don't know. It could have been on the other side of the building. We don't have a visual on the other side of the building when the explosion took place. And then the other person goes, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. And then just like that, they just, again, ramp up the whole airplane narrative one more time. The thing to keep in mind is the level of evil that allows something like this to take place. You had the CIA and Mossad, along with MI6 and other foreign governments, all coordinating and working together, paying endless people to go along with all of these lies. These individuals work within the news stations, they work within police departments, fire departments, they were on the ground, XYZ. I'm just going to finish it and summarize it by saying this. If you start with the fact that there were no airplanes on 9/11, your brain will explode, of course, but then you will, if you're asleep and you haven't ever done any kind of a dive on that subject. But once you start there, then you'll start to examine each individual aspect of it. And then you'll start to arrive at who was responsible, what took place, again, who was involved, the whole thing. But to skip a day like 9/11 and an anniversary like 9/11 from a social media standpoint, to skip that day and not be on the right platforms on the right day, you're missing a huge opportunity. Be on Gab on 9/11 and be on BitChute on 9/11 and watch the videos. Some of them are multiple hours long. Doesn't matter. Commit your day to it. If you're asleep to these issues and you don't know what happened and who our real enemy is, including our own government, then you need to start diving down those holes as fast as humanly possible and absorb as much information as humanly possible. Is it overwhelming? Yeah, it is, without a doubt. Because when you grasp the level of evil and the level of lying, you'll start to examine other examples of evil, I should say, and certainly all the other lying and terrible things that have taken place. But in the middle of all of that, I assure you, you will find God, because he's there and he's the one who wants you to know the truth. It's Satan who wants you to live an entire life believing a lie. So whatever you do, again, make sure that you're on the right platforms. BitChute, certainly for your video streaming, and then again, the exact same thing with Gab. And unfortunately, on Gab, you're going to see the occasional false meme, or a meme that tells a particular story of a guy on one of the airplanes that crashed and what a hero he was. All of that's fake. All of that's propaganda, and which means you just can't trust the account that the person has on that social media platform as being an actual real person. Maybe it's a bot, maybe it's a Fed, maybe it's someone in the CIA, whoever it is, who's trying to confuse people. But you can't have two contradicting stories that are at face value and have them both be right. Someone's wrong. Again, it's the old false equivalency thing. So there you go. Wanted to bring that to everyone's attention also. Give me a second here. Just looking at a few notes. Bang, bang, bang. Okay. That brings me to this, and then it'll slide right into the education-related topics, which are remarkably disturbing. If anybody's curious as to why the Proud Boys have been targeted by the fake criminal federal government, along with numerous other individuals, and sentenced to numerous years in jail, it's because the Proud Boys had decided that they were going to turn their efforts towards school board meetings and city council meetings. And what they were going to do apparently was not infiltrate, just show up as concerned citizens and start to speak out and do research about what these school boards were doing, these school districts were doing across America, and then the exact same thing within city council meetings within either major cities or even smaller areas. This right here should tell you that we are at war. We are at war with our own government. There is no doubt about that. They don't want the truth to get out. They don't want any of the asleep normies to even sniff out what's really taking place across our country. They don't want anybody waking up. They want everybody dead asleep. So, us as individuals, we have a responsibility to consistently bring factual information to people so that they can wake up. You've heard me say it here on the show, and frankly, I'm just going to say it again. One of the ways that you can contribute at a very basic level is by sharing this show. Text it to someone, email it to someone. They've never heard my voice, they've never seen my face. Have them look me up. That's fine. Anybody can look me up. Again, you Google me, you're going to get a whole lot of fun stuff. And I knew that, and I didn't care. That's the best part, because I don't have anything to lose. And when you're in a position like I am, when you have nothing to lose, well, it's God who gives us that strength. And so, at the very least, again, sharing this information and sharing shows like this, it doesn't have to be just this one, but sharing again the fact that BitChute is a real thing, that Gab is a real thing, that Telegram is a real thing. Sharing those with anybody you can, that can help wake them up too. So there you go. And then, of course, again, if someone brings up something that's not factually accurate, you have to correct them. And you have to correct them to their face, even if they become insulted or, they look like they've just smelled something terrible and they get that goofy look on their face. You still have to share the truth. And that's a massive part, because, again, that's exactly what the enemy doesn't want us to do. They want everybody to be demoralized and afraid to where they don't speak up about anything, and they just go along to get along. And that's why we are in the situation that we are in and still find ourselves in, and it's not good. And I have numerous examples that will describe all of that fraud and why that continues to take place, and then, of course, the demoralization that goes along with it. So let me get into the education stuff now. There is this. I mentioned this a long time ago, but this is still something that is continuing to take place, oddly enough, and it seems completely illegal because, frankly, it is. And keep in mind, Miami University, in the town where I live, is not the only university doing this. This is taking place, as you've heard me say, across the nation among endless colleges and universities, certainly from a hiring standpoint. Miami University is continuing to engage in a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement for all applying employees or candidates who attempt to work there. In particular, faculty members, or anybody, again, associated with actual teaching responsibilities. They want you to fill out a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement and what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you. This is a separate committee that reviews those statements that is not a part of the typical search committee that reviews your resume, your letters of recommendation, and whatever else. Now, again, you've heard me talk about that entire fraudulent process over and over again. That all they have to do is look at your name, and they can decide whether or not you're a white person or not. And if you're not, well, as we all know, that's the real definition of diversity, is eliminating white people. So they're not going to hire you then. Again, my name is Sean McCullough Brooks. It can't get more white than that. And I love it. I absolutely love my name. And I love the fact that I'm a white man. But the fact is that it's institutions like this that hate me. And that right there should prove to everybody they know exactly what they're doing. They don't even have to call you. You apply for a position to one of these colleges or universities, and they look at your name, and they look at your sex, white, male, Anglo-Saxon, Irish, English, and they go, nope, and they toss it right in the trash, and they go, thank you for your application. We had a lot of candidates who applied, and blah, 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 blah. That's what I personally experienced back in 2017, 2018, 2019. Same thing. I'm certain of it, 100%, because this right here proves it. This is what Miami University continues to do. What they're also doing, apparently, is they're making all of the female incoming freshmen take a STEM class. Science, technology, engineering, and math. And they, of course, are doing that because they're cramming STEM down the throats of women because they don't want women to be homemakers. They don't want women to have children. They don't want women to be in a nuclear-loving family with a providing husband. They want them to be in the sciences, where they will be barren, childless, unmarried, divorced, alcoholics, and miserable. That's not a stretch. What I just said is actually part of that nefarious plan set forth by the Rockefellers back during feminism. That's a real thing. This is all STEM is. STEM is a boardroom-created fake program to cram down these kinds of professions down the throats of females. Because females can do science too. Well, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they shouldn't. but it's designed to brainwash them into believing that this is what they have to do. So they again, apparently, it's mandatory for all incoming freshmen. Now, again, if you think that Miami University's the only one, allow me to go straight south. Jesse James sent this my way, and this is from the University of Mississippi. And this is their Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement. Let me just read a little bit from this. And it is disgusting. They say this here. They say their mission is, quote, the Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement works enthusiastically to develop programs and services that support the University of Mississippi's core value of inclusiveness. I love how these people think that segregation and discrimination is a real thing, but when they do it, it doesn't exist. That's the ultimate irony. It continues, and it says the center works to foster an environment that is characterized by open and ongoing communication that deepens students' understanding of their own and others' identity, culture, and heritage. It is dedicated to creating a supportive and inclusive campus environment that complements the academic experience, connects and engages students with the university community, and provides opportunities for success in a multicultural society. Blah, 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 blah. It's just word salad bullshit. Leftist word salad stuff. Created to provide programs and services that encourage cross-cultural interactions and provide a physical space that is both nurturing and welcoming for students with diverse backgrounds, the center emphasizes inclusion and broad cultural educational opportunities for all students. The Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement, please call 662-915-1689. or email inclusion@oldmiss.edu. What does that even mean? Are they not on planet Earth? Have they never walked down a street, gone into a store, seen that there are different people that live in different areas? Do they not know that this is a real thing? Every picture, by the way, here, okay, that they're flashing across the screen for their Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement is primarily black people. I'm just saying, it's primarily blacks. There's some whites in the football picture. Oh, look, there's a few whites. Okay. They're taking a picture of them too. The next one, okay, a few different ones. There's some white girls singing and a black girl singing and whatever else. And then it's just blacks and then blacks, and that's fine. But what does this even mean? What is the entire point of this? It's just leftist confusion nonsense. These environments are beyond poisonous because they are godless. They're godless environments. And they're not getting better. But again, I know a lot of people are communicating with trustees and they're communicating with legislators and saying, you can't do this. These are public universities. You can't discriminate, by having them fill out more statements. Ladies and gentlemen, that slippery slope has been slippery for a long time. That was back in the day, again, well over 10 plus years ago. Approximately 10 years ago, when I was an adjunct professor. When I was an adjunct professor for one semester at Miami University, they had me, again, I was only making $500 for an entire semester. They had me fill out this giant, or basically watch this giant PowerPoint presentation on sexual harassment. And make sure that you're not a sexual harasser. Do you know what sexual harassment is? I taught sexual harassment. Of course I know what it is. It's an abomination. But they want everybody to watch this PowerPoint presentation and then click the old terms of agreement at the very end, and then boom, bam, just like that, you're not going to sexually harass anybody. This kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion statement nonsense is crazy. But it's going on all over the place, and it's not going to go away. Again, those small PowerPoint presentations 10 years ago, that was the beginning of the slippery slope, and it continues to occur right down now to the point where if you can't define diversity, equity, and inclusion and what it means to you, and if you're not playing their pretend brainwashing nonsense game, then they don't want you around. What does that mean again about the environment? What does that say about the entire place? Does it sound like a mental institution? Does it sound like an institution of torture? Yeah, it certainly does, because that's exactly what it is. In fact, here's another example. This was this past week again from California, titled, California Assembly Passes Controversial Bill Granting Judges Authority to Remove Child Custody from Parents for Refusing to Affirm, quote unquote, their kids' gender identity. Newsom to make final decision. Now, again, in a nutshell, what does this mean? It means that if a child goes home from school in California and they've been brainwashed by the school system and the people who work within, and they start to pretend that they are a different sex than their actual sex, or they play this bullshit gender game all over again where they start making things up and adding pronouns and doing whatever they decide to do, because again, they're brainwashed, as are, of course, their parents and the people who are pushing this down their throats. It means that CPS can come in and take the child away from the family so that the child can continue to be whoever it is that they think they are, including chopping off their own genitals, taking hormone blockers, and the whole thing. There's some audio you're going to hear from California State Representative Lori Wilson, it says, who wrote AB 957, the quote-unquote Parents Affirm Their Children. And she says that, and she says a few other things. It's only 46 seconds long. This woman is, she's certifiable. And she needs to be institutionalized, and this is the problem. This is Satan, ladies and gentlemen. There's a rainbow flag, Satan is there. If there's any of this talk or discussion about how this is normal, Satan is there. And Satan is in California and having one hell of a time. So give this a listen.
Know that parents affirm their children. They have since the dawn of time. Typically, it happens when their gender identity expression matches their biological gender. But what happens is when it doesn't, that's when the affirmation starts to wane. And that's what we're dealing with here. Although it's called the TGI Bill, they're not mentioned anywhere in the law. What's mentioned in the law is the child's gender identity and expression and the parent's affirmation of that, whatever it is, because that is our duty as parents to affirm our children.
You can't fix that. I've said it 1,000 times. You can't fix that. That is not a frame of mind that can be fixed. A lobotomy won't fix her. This person is gone. They're gone. That person is absolutely nuts. They're a child abuser, just like all the parents who sent their kids to school wearing masks. Child abusers. This woman, same thing. Same thing. It's no different. Everybody knows it's the parents' responsibility to teach their children the difference between right and wrong. And a healthy family doesn't play these kinds of games. Because a healthy family has God in it, not Satan. That's typically the way that it works. So, time will tell on that, whether or not Newsom signs it. What I do know is this. If you continue to send your children to California schools with this as a law, even if your child has their head on straight and they know the difference between right and wrong and they know that this bill is crazy and all of that. Ladies and gentlemen, our participation and lack of participation in the American school system is the most vital thing that we can do. We have to leave those places for the crazy people. Just leave it for them. Pull your children out. If they can read and write, they can teach themselves. Pull them out. And leave it for the crazy people. Because if all the sane people leave, the school won't exist anymore. They won't be able to find enough crazy people to fill it. They might. They'll start filling it with illegals, which is exactly, of course, what every other state in the United States is doing. Again, I saw a great video the other day on Gab. God bless Gab. It's an incredible resource. But excuse me, there was a dad talking about, he lives in Texas, and he was saying, why is it that every time that New York City and illegal aliens entering New York schools becomes a national headline, but when it happens here in Texas, it's not a national headline? He goes, this is happening in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, everywhere. It's happening in Kansas. It's happening in Oklahoma. It's happening in Ohio. It's happening in every state in the United States. But nope, it's old New York. New York and California are the squeaky wheels, and they always get the grease. We're being invaded from every avenue, but your participation in those institutions is enabling the invasion. And you're enabling the behavior of the people who are conducting the invasion and going along with the invasion and supporting the invasion. If you stop going, then the whole thing falls apart. And that's exactly what has to happen moving forward. So I'm throwing that out there again, and it's going to tie in perfectly later on to, again, this section of this book, Live Not by Lies. That makes perfect sense. Regardless of your level of participation, if you're still participating, you're still a part of the problem. And if you stop participating, well, then you have a clear conscience. You know exactly what you've done, and you're helping contribute to the destruction of these horrific environments. So there you go. Just wanted to throw that out. On a positive note, however, excuse me, in the old college realm, when it comes to really cool majors to have in college, there's an Oklahoma college here that is offering bachelor's degrees to gunsmithing, and the lefties are having none of it, as the title goes. It says the following here on twitchy.com. Take that for whatever it means, but anyway, it says, quote, as most reasonable and rational adults know, learning a marketable skill is far superior to a liberal arts degree in gender studies, in underwater basket weaving, or interpretive dance. As we also know, the average progressive lefty is neither reasonable nor rational. And the proof is right here in the unhinged response to this tweet from Governor Ken Stitt, where they said, quote, we're a Second Amendment state through and through. Love hearing this news out of Murray State College in Tishomingo, Oklahoma. So again, Oklahoma school to offer nation's first bachelor's in gunsmithing. Absolutely awesome. So yeah, I applaud them. And a lot of people are applauding them too, and rightfully so. Guns need to be made. And making more American guns is a great thing. And yeah, it's going to get them not only making guns, but making guns for themselves. And making guns again at a local business level and a small company level, which, as we know, economically is a huge deal in the United States. So, perfect. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, Miami University is discriminating against their applicants because they don't know how to fill out a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, and they think that all of that is real when in fact it's pretend. See the spectrum here? It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. All right. Here we go. Jab stuff. This is big. This is a big, big deal, and this right here is going to answer a whole lot of your questions regarding why sheriff's departments aren't doing a single damn thing about the biological weapons that exist in their county that are being disguised as COVID vaccinations. This right here was in the local newspaper in the county where I live, Butler County, Ohio, whose sheriff is a Sheriff Richard Jones, a pseudo-conservative when in fact he's really just a Freemason and a piece of trash. Here's the title, and then I'll get into the actual article itself. Just a quick review, though. As you know, Kim Carter and myself met with a deputy sheriff a couple of years ago, told him about the bioweapons. That got sent up the chain. Then it got tossed to a prosecutor's office where I had a phone call with a guy, and he goes, well, it's debatable. It's all debatable, and that's a debate. And yeah, I'm sick with COVID, but at least I had the shots because it could have been a whole lot worse. Well, you're an idiot. And so is everybody at the sheriff's department, and they have no idea this is a biological weapon killing everybody who takes it. Okay, including giving them AIDS. Now, here's the title of the article. Federal pandemic relief for Butler County. Welcome, but taxing. By a Denise Callahan. It says the following, quote, and this right here is the giveaway. It's the proof. The Butler County Sheriff's Office just received a $772,153 First Responder Retention Incentive Grant and is one of many pandemic windfalls that have come to the county from the federal government. But the red tape is plentiful. See what I mean? That's why Sheriff Jones won't return my phone calls. That's why Sheriff Jones doesn't want any paperwork on the biological weapons that are killing everybody who takes them, including the dummies who work for the Butler County Sheriff's Department, if they in fact took them. Again, the sheriff's deputy that Kim Carter and I talked to, he didn't take them. So he said, my kids aren't taking them, my wife didn't take them. We said, well, that's good, because if you do, you gon' die. So, think about that. Next paragraph, here we go. It says the county has received millions in federal pandemic funds. First, $18.7 million in Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES funds, in late March of 2020, and then nearly $75 million in American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, funds. But many more grants have come through under the ARPA umbrella. Here's the best part, too. Little side note. It said in the title that it's taxing and it comes with a lot of red tape. Ladies and gentlemen, Butler County and their sheriff's department could turn down this money instantly. The federal government comes in and says, we're going to give you all this money. All they have to do to not make more work for themselves is say no. And then they return the check to the federal government and they don't have to fill out shit. But they're not doing that. Why? Because they believe the lie and they're criminals. And they're brainwashed. That's it. This is a very difficult beast to slay. Because when they're being thrown all this money, and you'd better know they're taking a cut for themselves and sticking it in their back pocket, probably to the tune of under $10,000, probably around $5,000 per person. Just slide it right in there and say, well, it's for office PPE. We need more masks and blah, blah, blah. No. They're making some car payments with this. They're taking their families out to dinner. It continues, unfortunately. But again, keep in mind, this is happening in your county too. Wherever you live, wherever you are, your police department, your county officials, they're receiving this money too. And they're scraping a little for themselves. It goes on here, quote, Jill Cole, the finance director for the county auditor's office, provided the Journal News a list of federal grant funding expenses for 2020, 2021, and the preliminary audit for 2022. She said the list of COVID-19 grants likely isn't all-inclusive because they don't have a central grant coordinator, but it shows various county agencies and offices have spent about $52.4 million in pandemic relief money. Now, here's the joke on all of them. There's no pandemic, there's no relief, and any money that went to masks and shots is going to be the cause of your death and the deaths of the people who participate. I want that to sink in with everybody because I don't think that the weight of what's going on here is having its desired impact yet. I truly don't. If we're talking about tens of millions of dollars, almost 100 million plus. In fact, it is 100 million plus, as it says here in just a minute. That right there should tell you it's all based on a lie and all for a lie, which is designed to kill people. Again, it's the old meme of Satan whispering into Christ's ear, and he just says, all I had to do was threaten them with the loss of their job. There's another meme, all I had to do was offer them a few $1,000,000 and they'll do whatever we want. It's the same thing. It goes on, it says that doesn't include that 52.4 million, doesn't include the 75 million in ARPA money the commissioners received directly, because the commissioners have given most of that money to outside entities, and reporting and other requirements have slowed the process. The sheriff's latest gift is part of a $100 million Governor Mike DeWine that has awarded through the Ohio First Responder Recruitment, Retention, and Resilience Program using ARPA funds. This grant is so specific the county had to provide a roster names of sheriff's employees, about half the 400 on staff, and the incentive payments, which are about $4,000 per employee, are only for certain classes of employees, like most, but not all deputies, dispatchers, paramedics, but not emergency medical technicians, according to Sheriff's Finance Director Vicki Barger. So nurses don't get jack squat. But deputies get money, $4,000 a person. She said the payout amounts have changed a few times, and only employees who were working on or before June 17th of 2022 and are still working when the funds arrive in October or November of 2023. So, quote, we may be returning like $20,000 of that money, unquote. Ooh. You're returning $20,000 of tens of millions of dollars. It's a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the bucket. It goes on. She said the rules have been changed, yet are very rigid. Quote, that list cannot be altered in any way because we asked, what if we forgot a name and they said too bad, unquote. The county's development department also ran into problems with the ever-changing rules and deadlines set by the U.S. Treasury for the $20.4 million they received in emergency rent and utility assistance grants. The commissioners were awarded $11.4 million in January of 2021 to help renters unable to pay their bills due to the pandemic. There was no pandemic. Everybody was lied to, just like 9/11. There were no airplanes. You were lied to. Quote, they were approved for another $9 million in the second round of funding in June of 2021, but chose not to collect it until the end of January because they wanted to gauge the need first. Oh, I'm sure you did, but I bet you took it anyway. It says, let me see here, blah, blah, blah. The Treasury notified the county the day before the deadline it needed to expend 20% or $1.8 million of the $9 million tranche by March 31st, but they were still drawing down the first pot of money, so they forfeited $1.4 million. Who cares? They still banked in big time based on a lie. It says County Administrator Julie Boyko said the commissioners were basically punished for be prudent. Quote, it's almost like the program was set up to penalize those governments that were being mindful and responsible on spending it, Boyko said. Well, yes and no. The larger government is a criminal organization, and they want to see if you're going to be a criminal organization with them. And if you ask too many questions, well, then you're not playing their criminal game. But if you still take the money based on a lie, you're still playing the criminal game. They're just not going to give you as much as they would have because you were asking too many questions. They're all in on it. It says the program had to be paused at one point because the second tranche of money wasn't dispersed in bulk like the first time and payments were delayed. Development Director David Fair said handling this money has also taken a toll on his staff. I'm sure it has. See, oh my God in heaven. I'm rubbing my face. Again, rubbing my face again. I'm going to rub the skin right off my scalp. This right here continues to be the problem. This is why these people are not good managers. My brother even taught me this. He said, you want to be a good manager, don't make work for people. Don't make work. If someone comes around and the thing that's coming around is going to make more work than what you already have to do as your paid job, then you say no. You just say no. But they're not doing that because you're talking about them getting what they think is free money. And they're all in on it for the money. What do you mean we get free money? What do you mean we gotta work harder and fill out more paperwork to get free money? Okay, we'll do it. They don't give a damn how much people have to work in order to keep this lie alive. Continues, quote, this is from the director themselves, this David Fair. We're told that reporting would be semi-annual, and it's 1 page, and then that morphs into quarterly. 10-page documents of data they need, Fair said, quote, which is fine if we knew that from the beginning. We could have been tracking that. Now we have to go back and recreate reports for data we weren't expected to provide earlier in the process, so it makes it twice as time-consuming. Well, whose fault's that? You trusted government, and you are government. See, when local government is still trusting larger government, that's the problem. That's the bigger problem. It continued. When the $75 million award was announced, the commissioners decided they wanted to share the wealth with other communities and groups to make the most transformative impact county-wide. Because of that, extra steps had to be taken to track all of the money, because the county is ultimately responsible for how it is spent. Boyko said, while the money the commissioners received has been beneficial, there have been hidden costs. No shit. No shit. If you erect a building or buy a piece of property, you're going to be paying more than you thought. That's the way it works. It says that this person said, this Boyko, quote, from my perspective as a practitioner, generally there are 2 categories of gifts from higher levels of government, she said. Unfunded mandates and funding with so much complexity that it's difficult to utilize and see some balance where the cost of implementing the funding and staffing the funding and administrating the funding is of net value. I got a 3rd category, sweetheart. It's called funding based on a lie. There's that one too. It's not unfunded mandates or funding with so much complexity. There's funding of a criminal nature based on a lie. There's that one too. And that's what you're participating in. It continues and it wraps up. It says, quote, the commissioners still have $10 million left to allocate, and they have until 2026 to spend it. A few entities that already received funding have asked for more money, like Middletown, where additional funds are needed for the Sunny Hill Community Center project. Boyko said the commissioners are still mulling those requests and weighing how the money can be best used in these post-pandemic times. There was no pandemic. And the federal government's telling you that we're always in a pandemic. So what the hell are you talking about? It's just crazy. It's crazy. Last paragraph, quote, this is all from Boyko, the anointed one. The board is continuing to want to allocate the funding where they identify the greatest need and demand. And they all wanted to deliberately watch, because what happened to the county right after COVID and everything opened back up is different than a year out, Boyko said, quote, here we are close to 2 years out, and I think they are looking to see where is the last allocation going to be the most impactful, unquote. It's a trap, and you took it. You bit on the fake shrimp in the water. It's a piece of plastic, but you thought it was real. Hook, line, and sinker. You're jabbed, you wore the mask, you have AIDS, and now you can't balance the books. Because all you had to do was say no. But you didn't. You didn't give the money back. And now you're in it. And you're going to be dead before any of this money gets spent. You can't fix this, ladies and gentlemen. You can't fix it. We are quite literally living through the collapse of this country. We are living through it. I say that with half a smirk on my face because I find it to be fascinating. I say it with a frown on the other side of my face, not because I've had a stroke, but because endless people don't know what's going on. And all of these individuals at the local government level managing all of this fake currency and this fiat paper money, they have no idea that it has zero value. They don't know the bigger picture. They've been going along with this lie the entire time. You can't do that in your life and expect to survive. You can't keep believing lies and expect to make it. You're going to be dead. This is going to continue to happen. You know, I'm indifferent on the whole thing. It is still quite the time to be alive, but I'm frankly just indifferent at this point. Okay, so if you were curious as to why, again, sheriff's departments and counties are not looking into any of this, it's because they're getting kickbacks and grants that total $50 to $70+ million, sometimes in multiple installments. And yes, their own employees are getting bonuses. What are you getting? What are you getting out of all of this? It's incredible. It's incredible. That leads me to this now. For the brainwashed who don't know what's going on regarding the bioweapon, this is from naturalnews.com. Obstruction of justice. FDA is refusing to provide COVID vaccine safety data to Congress as requested. Why would that be? Why would that be? We, of course, know the safety data because Pfizer's court released it, and I've gone over that at length on this show, and it exists on my website. So Congress is asking for it from the FDA. FDA is saying no, but why doesn't Congress just get Pfizer in there? Why don't they get Pfizer in there and get old Albert Bourla to testify in front of them? Because most people in Congress are getting a kickback from Pfizer. See the criminal nature here? Here's another one. This actually isn't new, but I remember hearing rumblings of this a couple years ago, but now it's at least out. And this is I will open this up here. This is the contract, the Pfizer contract that was given to the government of the Republic of South Africa. And it is titled Manufacturing and Supply Agreement between Pfizer Laboratories Proprietary Limited and the government of the Republic of South Africa acting through the National Department of Health of South Africa, dated the 30th of March of 2021. In this Pfizer contract, for South Africans to receive jabs to then give to whoever lives there, it says this under Section 5.5, which is titled the Purchaser Acknowledgement. It says this, can't make it up, quote, Purchaser acknowledges that the vaccine and materials related to the vaccine and their components and constituent materials are being rapidly developed due to the emergency circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and will continue to be studied after provision of the vaccine to purchaser under this agreement. It then says, purchaser further acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known, and that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. Further, to the extent applicable, purchaser acknowledges that the product shall not be serialized. No serial numbers, No data. We're pushing this out because, well, we have to because it's a pandemic. And all that lie nonsense. And they openly admit in their contract with the Republic of South Africa that we don't know what the long-term effects are. We don't know what the short-term effects are. We don't know what the adverse effects are. Good luck, have fun. Genocide, ladies and gentlemen. We're living through the largest genocide that's ever taken place in the history of man. There is this, then. Not new to us, of course. I wrote a book about this in January of 2021. But here it is like it's brand new. Vigilant News, and this, of course, was from Dr. Makis, who is one of the influencers, apparently, of Vigilant News, titled, this is on September 8th, Masks Are Ruining Children's Lives. Dr. Makis uncovers how bad it is. I wrote a book about this in January of 2021. I didn't even have to do that. Back in 2020, when they simply said, wear a mask, I said, go to hell. When you had kids wearing them, I called these people child abusers to their faces. AJ Gochik just did it at a Starbucks a couple of weeks ago. See what I mean? This is still happening. People are still doing this. It's torture. And if you went along with it, you're a part of the problem. I want to make that abundantly clear here. You're a part of the problem. I'm glad you're not doing it anymore. Again, don't want to ostracize anybody, but you get what I'm saying. Developmental disabilities are up 17% in kids 3 to 17. Research shows 23% drop in young children's IQ, 30% drop in verbal development. But ladies and gentlemen, they're schools. Remember, they're in the education business. They know more than a parent. They're more qualified than parents are. Yes, they engaged in the largest example of child abuse known to man, which violates all of their contractual obligations in every law on the books. But if everybody's doing it, ladies and gentlemen, it's 100% fine. If everybody's raping, murdering, pillaging, and doing whatever they're doing, if we're all doing it, it's not illegal. Everybody gets to keep their job as long as you go along with the crime. Unbelievable. I will hand it to Dr. Makis on this. He references these articles, he lists them. And again, I'm glad that Vigilant News puts out his articles because, again, Makis charges people to read his articles on Substack. But he highlights a bunch of articles here, which, again, I probably already have on my giant list, but I will add these also. I just want to run through some of these brief titles, or at least summaries of their titles, dating back to February of 2021. And it runs right through 2023. Face masks for babies. That was a peer-reviewed article. Masking emotions was another one. CO2 in inhaled air. That was another one. Toxicity of CO2 in children is another one. Face processing in early development is another one. Mask impact, audio-visual, constant recognition. I'm sorry, I'm getting that word wrong. Another one, mask impact on infant learning of faces. Another one, developmental disabilities are up 17%. Another one, mask mandates stunted babies' development. Another one, 23% dive in children's development. Here's more masks from this February of 2021 article here, or more facts rather, from this face masking article, and it's a bunch of bullet points, and he's got more bullet points from all these articles. It says, baby brain grows rapidly. The brain growth is strongly affected by experiences with people and their words. Babies can recognize a mother's face from faces of strangers. It only takes newborns a few days to learn how to discriminate between differing emotional facial expressions such as happy, sad, and surprised. By 5 months of age, a baby can match an emotional expression like a sad face with a corresponding sad vocal expression. A 5-year-old child has developed the ability to recognize and label facial expressions with the competence of most adults. Masking may hinder an infant's ability to develop facial processing and orientation. The mask may interfere with the parent-infant bond and longer-term attachment. And the face masks delay or impair an infant's cognitive, social, emotional, and neurobehavioral development, which can also lead to difficulties in learning and forming effective relationships later in life. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Elementary school and preschool teachers and middle school teachers and administrators and high school employees and so on and so on, they know what's best. They all know what's best. These people can't read. They can't read. They're not literate. I could go through all the bullet points of this particular article. It's astounding. It's astounding. You've heard me say it before. It's like, again, it's deja vu in the Matrix, in the Twilight Zone all over again. Here we are still talking about the dangers of mask wearing to people who are still wearing them. And we're still communicating this back and forth on a constant basis because it's still around. And it's continuing to come back and is back in numerous school districts and places of employment. And it's coming back again at Christ Hospital in Cincinnati. And Kim Carter and I, well, we got a few plans, but we're working a few things out and we'll see what we can do. But I'm telling you what, it's all about control. It's all about control and compliance. And if you go along with it, you're a part of the problem. Now, here's another element of this, which again matters, and it's something that isn't widely reported nor discussed. This has to do with prisons and what's going on in prisons. Here's a recently published peer-reviewed article titled, COVID-19 Infection Rates in Vaccinated and Unvaccinated Inmates, a Retrospective Cohort Study. I don't even have to read the abstract. You know where this is going. If you've listened to this show, you know exactly what this means. People in prisons all across the United States, many of them, force their inmates to take the jabs, which means what for all of them? They're all finished. No one's reporting on the death rate within prisons. That individuals are having heart attacks, strokes, not waking up in the morning, when the old bell goes off and the metal doors slide open. No one's reporting on that. That's happening. On a wide scale, I might add. It has to. It's mathematically impossible that it wouldn't. But when you have those that are jabbed in prison, congregating around or having sexual relations with those who are unjabbed in prison, or any environment, frankly, but certainly in prison, they're making the unjabbed sick. The jabbed are making the unjabbed sick. So here's the abstract. It says the following. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to read the conclusion. Yeah. Because they talk about variants and, the Omicron variant was different than initial infection. No, that's not it. It's because they're jabbed now and they have AIDS and they have a permanently compromised immune system, and therein lies the problem. Here's the conclusion. The conclusion of this study says, quote, "We note low infection rates in both the vaccinated and unvaccinated groups with a small absolute difference between the two across age groups." This is fraudulent. It says a combination of monovalent and bivalent vaccines and natural infections likely contributed to immunity and a lower level of infection rates compared to the height of the pandemic. That's impossible. I'm glad I'm reading this because this right here is proof too. There's no way that this is real. This is Cereus, Cureus is the name of the journal, part of the Springer Nature Group. This is a fraudulent study. Has to be. It says, and lower levels of infection. Okay, I read that. Here we go. It is possible that a degree of herd immunity had been achieved, yet using P greater or less than 0.05 as the threshold for statistical significance, the bivalent vaccinated group had a slightly but statistically significantly higher infection rate than the unvaccinated group in the statewide category at the age greater than 50 years category. That's true. So they just admitted that if you're jabbed in prison and you're above the age of 50, you're sick more often than those who are not. It says, however, in the older age category, greater than 65 years, there was no significant difference in infection rates between the two groups. Well, there wouldn't be, because the jabbed are sick and the unjabbed are getting sick because they're around one another. The electromagnetism between the two groups is equally as destructive. It says this suggests that while the bivalent vaccine might offer protection against severe outcomes, which it doesn't, it may not significantly reduce the risk of infections entirely. And seen. There you go. They just admitted it. It might work, but it might not work. Further research is needed to understand the reasons behind these findings and to consider other factors, such as underlying health conditions. Ah, that old yarn. There might be an underlying health condition. That's why two-tone Eddie Jenkins was found dead in his bunk, because he was jabbed 3 times, but it was probably because of an underlying health condition. R.I.P. Two-tone. Says this study underscores the importance of developing vaccines that target residual COVID-19 infections, especially in regard to evolving COVID-19 variants. Shut up. Just shut up. These people, I'll tell you what. All Asian, by the way, except for, well, not all Asian. 3 of them are Asian. A Chang, a Ko, and a Win. And then a Gary Mallett and a Robert Mays are the authors of that terrible, terrible article. You can't have such contradicting information in a research article and have you not re-engage in the scientific method and go back to your hypothesis and then go backwards in time and say to yourself, wait a minute, maybe we're getting more wrong than we thought. Maybe we're missing something. And then they look at each other and they go, to hell with it. Let's publish it anyway. Because we want it on our resume. Because it gives us all our necessary medical certification points that we need. And this right here, again, is part of the con game. This is part of the game. All right. Few more things here. Stick with me. You're going to like the end and the story in the book that I'm going to read here in a minute. Here's another peer-reviewed article, very recent. Does SARS-CoV-2 induce IgG4 synthesis to evade the immune system? Sure does. Yeah, sure does. It causes IgG4 antibodies, which come about as a result of having what? AIDS. I'm going to read the last part of this abstract. It says, quote, oh, look, yeah, I think I've already read this. It references a cytokine storm. Strange. An overactive immune response that may result in tissue damage and organ malfunction. The underlying mechanisms of immune suppression in SARS-CoV-2 are not entirely understood at this time. The research is being conducted to gain a more comprehensive understanding. Antibodies produced by the B cells in response to an infection of SARS-CoV-2 generate immunological tolerance, which prevents its elimination and leads to persistent and chronic infection. In summary, we believe that this constitutes another immune evasion mechanism that bears striking similarities to the development by cancer cells to evade immune surveillance. They're telling you it's giving you AIDS. And one of the side effects, or the S syndromes in AIDS, of course, is cancer. It's right here. It's unbelievable. They're saying it constantly, but we think we need more research and we think that we need to find things out. We already know. This has been around for a very long time. Since the inception of the first vaccination that's ever been injected into a human body. Cancer was present. It's always been the case. John Adams, former president of the United States, okay? His own daughter died of cancer, breast cancer, after being injected with a vaccination. Well, there's something going around, John. We need to inject everybody. Oh, please. Injected his daughter, breast cancer, had her breasts cut off with a knife, and then died of cancer later on. Because back then, if a lump was determined to be found in the breast, they just lopped it right off and said, well, we think we got it. This is still happening today. It's still happening. Sorry for laughing, but I have to or I'll start crying. This is still going on. And people are still going along with it. Here's another one. And then I'm going to get into the book. This is the last article, I promise, and then I'm going to get into the book. Here it is. This is from Exposing the Darkness, lionessofjudah.substack.com. Science Fraud, it is titled. Pfizer's COVID jab placebo control group was given the Moderna vaccine. Instead, preprint confirms. I'm going to summarize this. This is by Ethan Huff. During the trials in 2020 for the jabs for Pfizer, they didn't really give out placebos to anybody. They gave them a separate vaccination. Do you understand the weight of that? They were giving them Moderna shots and calling it a placebo. Now that we know this for a fact, based on this documentation from the vaccine trials, bioweapon trials, anybody who says placebos were given during the trials doesn't know what they're talking about. That includes the likes of Robert Kennedy Jr. Now, what does this continue to prove? Or it certainly leans in that direction from a scientific method approach. It means that the evidence is leaning more toward they're not just now, as we have discovered, not me, but others have clearly discovered that there were no placebos in the trials. What does that mean? It means that it's very likely that there were no placebos given to the mass population after the trials, after the emergency use authorization. That's where we sit with this now, which means that's the hypothesis of the scientific method. Now, we have yet to have anybody prove to anybody that there were placebos given to the general population that were, in fact, saline, that weren't a Moderna jab or Moderna's version of their placebo was the Pfizer jab, really. We have no proof of that. So when the likes of the Alex Joneses of the world will say something like 50% of the people received a placebo, that's been shown. Where? Where has that been shown that that's the case? Are we really believing the likes of the Dr. Ryan Coles where he said, well, the jabs had to be kept at a particular temperature, and if you got injected with it, well, then you just got a pile of mush. Are we really believing that? Or is a person still injecting themselves with poison, which is still damaging their DNA, which is causing VAIDS, AIDS, however you want to phrase it? I'm sorry. As of right now, I am not in the camp that there were placebos. In a depopulation agenda, why would there be? And in a depopulation agenda, when they were rolling out these shots in numerous doses over the course of certainly 2021, and then again through 2022 and even now, what indication is there that there are actually placebos floating around in the already jabbed? I'm sorry. I don't buy it. Not yet. I just don't buy it. I don't buy that there were placebos. You even again now have the Surgeon General of Florida, the Dr. Lapido guy. He's openly now come out within the last 2 days and said, no one in Florida, no one period, should take any shot going forward for anything ever. Certainly not these COVID jabs. But ladies and gentlemen, you shouldn't be taking shots for anything ever again. For anything. They're ubiquitous across the board. All of it has the nanotech in it now. All of it. Same thing with prescription drugs. That's the next synthesized move, is it not? It's already been shown that synthesized snake venom is in the shots, which is why it's disrupting the nervous systems and the central nervous system of people who take it. The same is true in pill form too with snake venom. Why wouldn't they do it with synthesized mRNA or synthesized nanotechnology, which is synthesized? I mean, there's no such thing as natural nanotech. But this continues to be the issue, which leads me to this, and then I'm going to get into the books, and I'm glad that I just remembered this, because this is going to be the subject of my next Substack here for the month of September. There's a serious buoy in the water here when it comes to October 4th's FEMA emergency broadcast system that's going to go out on everybody's cell phones, okay? Just to review briefly. I may have said it in the last episode, and if I did, my apologies for repeating myself, but I'm just going to repeat myself here because I have to hear myself say it one more time. And it will be the subject of the Substack going forward, so it'll be in written form, so you can have people actually read it and connect the dots for themselves, and of course share all of that. A serious marker in a buoy in the water right now is for people to track the illnesses that exist now, and anybody can do this, among your family members, friends, coworkers, neighbors, etc., etc. And then what happens the day of that emergency broadcast system, which is tied into 5G, the 5G towers, of course, and everybody walking around with these electromagnetic radiation devices in their hands or pockets. That EBS system is going to go out on cell phones, radios, and TVs. So, what's going to happen with the people who have taken the jabs? That signal goes out, massive amounts of radiation working its way through the air, into people's hands, into their devices, into their bodies. And they're jabbed with the nanotech, which negatively is impacted by electromagnetic frequency and radiation and 5G towers. So this is the buoy in the water here. The marker is October 4th. What's going on before October 4th? That October 4th marker, and then the illness that will be acquired or accumulate after October 4th. That's the kicker. That's the thing to pay attention to. If more people are sick after October 4th, you will know that the EBS system and the 5G towers played a role. Because they are connected. Mark Steele was on the show. He even said so. Go back in the search bar of the podcasts, look up Mark Steele's name on my show, listen to that episode. He said they are connected. They are not separate. Yes, they're separate from a deadly standpoint. You inject yourself with a bioweapon in the middle of the woods, nowhere close to a 5G tower, you're still going to buy it. But if you do both and have done both and are around the same environments, where you're injected and you're around 5G during and after October 4th, I think all bets are off here. In the university town where I live, as you know, they erected at least half a dozen 20-foot 5G towers in the dead of night around major intersections and places where students congregate. I'm not counting the ones that may or may not be on the actual campus itself. But we know that, of course, the wireless environments, those buildings are loaded with wireless environments. All of those frequencies are bouncing off the walls and being absorbed within the walls, which means when you walk in as a human being, you are radioactive, theoretically. You're glowing. If you've got the jabs and you're jabbed, and all those signals go out instantly, that can't be healthy for anybody. So that's my marker. That's the buoy in the water here that I would encourage people to pay attention to. the illness that is related to individuals who are jabbed after October 4th. Now, with that aside for a minute, I think it's going to be interesting because there's still so many dead asleep people that when that October 4th, I think falls on a Thursday at 2:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when that goes off on people's TVs and cell phones, endless dead asleep people are going to have no idea what the hell is going on. And it's going to be constant, and it's going to be ear-piercing. I was having lunch with my mom the other day, and we looked around and we said, you see this place? If this place starts humming with that emergency broadcast system, and we're the only ones that know what the hell's going on, I mean, how is everybody going to react? Are they going to start panicking? Are they going to stand up and leave? Are they going to look around and go, what the hell's going on? What is this? Do they even know? To be in a large group when something like this occurs would be one hell of a sociological experiment, would it not? It would be incredible. With all of that said, I'm not recommending that. I think you stay away as far from crowds as you possibly can at 2:20 p.m. on October 4th. Sir, I wouldn't be on the road if I was you. That's my 2 cents. In fact, I wouldn't have my cell phone on me. I would turn it off. I would turn off as many electronics as you possibly can wherever you are, and I would let that date come and go. You can get online later and listen to what the message was and what it sounded like and whatever else. Hell, it may even show up on your phone with your phone turned off. But I wouldn't be around a crowd, and if you send your children to school that day, I wouldn't. I wouldn't for a variety of reasons, you know why, but I certainly wouldn't then. That's not a good idea. Keep your kids home from school that day. Call in sick to work. Take a fake COVID day. Send them a nice fake COVID test in the mail and, send them a picture of it, text them one, and say, I've tested positive for COVID, the irony. And then, stay home. I wouldn't be on the road. I wouldn't be in a workplace with the wireless environments, and I wouldn't be in a school environment. But then again, that's just me. I could be wrong. So, there's that. Okay. The book, Live Not by Lies, a manual for Christian dissidents by a Rod Dreher. 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 Okay. Like I said, it's set up into 2 parts. The second part of the book is titled Part 2, ironically enough, and it's titled How to Live in Truth. Well, we know how to do that, but he does provide some interesting suggestions, and I have the book in front of me. My little Rush Limbaugh impersonation here. It's right here. Allow me to read this, and I'm going to butcher some of these words, but I'm not going to edit this. I'm just going to keep reading and slug through it because, again, they make excellent points, and he makes excellent points, pulls in history and a few other things. Here it is, Chapter 5. This would be page 97. It is titled Value Nothing More Than Truth. It says the following. Solzhenitsyn was not the only dissident to make live not by lies, quote unquote, the core of anti-totalitarian resistance. Czech playwright and future post-communist president Václav Havel's most famous injunction to would-be dissidents was to, quote, live in truth, unquote. In his most important piece of political writing, which was secretly passed around by Sazmedat, Havel wrote about the, quote, the power of the powerless, which was the essay's title. Havel knew that he was addressing a nation that had no way to rise up against the might of the Czechoslovak police state. But he also knew something most of them did not. They were not entirely powerless. Consider, he said, the case of the greengrocer who posts a sign in his shop bearing the well-known slogan for the Communist Manifesto, from the Communist Manifesto, quote, workers of the world unite, unquote. He doesn't believe in it. He hangs it in his shop as a signal of his own conformity. He just wants to be left alone. His action is not meaningless, though. The Greengrocer's Act only confirms that this is what is expected of one in a communist society, but also perpetuates the belief that this is what it means to be a good citizen. Havel goes on to say, quote, "Let us not imagine that one day something in our greengrocer snaps and he stops putting up the slogans merely to integrate himself or interrogate himself. Ingrainate himself. There you go. I can read. I promise. He stops voting in elections that he knows are a farce. He begins to say what he really thinks as political meanings, and he even finds the strength in himself to express solidarity with those whom his conscience commands him to support. In this revolt, the greengrocer steps out of a living within the lie. He rejects the rituals and breaks the rules of the game. He discovers once more his suppressed identity and dignity. He gives his freedom a concrete significance. His revolt is an attempt to live within the truth." Unquote. It says this costs him. He loses his shop, his salary is cut, and he won't be able to travel abroad. Maybe his children won't be able to get into college. People persecute him and those around him, not necessarily because they oppose his stance, not necessarily because they oppose his stance, but because they know that this is what they have to do to keep the authorities off their backs. The poor little greengrocer who testifies to the truth by refusing to mouth a lie suffers. But there is a deeper meaning to his gesture. By breaking the rules of the game, he has disrupted the game as such. He has exposed it as a mere game. It has shattered the world of appearances and fundamental pillar of the system. He has upset the power structure by tearing apart what holds it together. This is all what Havel basically stated regarding this. He's demonstrated that living a lie is living a lie. He has broken through the exalted facade of the system and exposed the real base foundations of power. He has said that the emperor is naked, and because the emperor is in fact naked, something extremely dangerous has happened. By his action, the greengrocer has addressed the world. He has enabled everyone to peer behind the curtain. He has shown everyone that it is possible to live within the truth. Living within the lie can constitute the system if it is universal. The principle must embrace and permeate everything. There is no terms whatsoever on which it can coexist with living within the truth, and therefore everyone who steps out of line denies it in principle and threatens it in its entirety. Unquote. It says, a Russian Orthodox mystic of the 19th century, a Saint Seraphim of Sarov, once said, quote, "Acquire the Holy Spirit, and thousands around you will be saved." Unquote. In that sense, what the greengrocer has done is a small act of rebellion that may act as a spark of a revolution that saves liberty and humanity. A person who lives only for his own comfort and survival and who is willing to live within a lie to protect that is, says Havel, quote, a demoralized person. Quote, the system depends on this demoralization, deepens it. It is in fact a projection of it into society, he writes. Quote, living within the truth as humanity's revolt against an enforced position is, on the contrary, an attempt to regain control over one's own sense of responsibility. Unquote. And it says, Václav Havel published that essay in 1978, and a year later, the communist government returned the troublemaking writer to prison. 10 years later, Havel led a revolution that peacefully toppled the regime and became the first president of a free Czechoslovakia. In time, a mere writer willing to suffer for truth took power from totalitarian zealots who marshaled an entire state in the service of lies. In The Happy Fate of Havel, we see the truth of an old Russian proverb beloved by Solzhenitsyn, quote, "One word of truth outweighs the whole world." It is up to us to take up this challenge, to live not by lies, and to speak the truth that defeats evil. How do we do this in a society built on lies? By accepting a life outside the mainstream, courageously defending the truth, and being willing to endure the consequences. These challenges are daunting, but we are blessed with examples from saints who've gone before. Unquote. Thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.